Hello, everyone. My name is Serafina Busby. I'm a WASH specialist at DAI, and I helped to organize this session entitled Three Bridges Towards Water Security in Kenyan Counties. Welcome. The 2010 Kenyan Constitution, Water Act 2016, and Vision 2030 call for an efficient, decentralized, and responsive sector that delivers water to all Kenyans. Commitment to this goal remains high, but progress has been constrained by financial and operational inefficiencies of urban and rural water service providers, the limited professionalization of informal vendors, and challenges to respond to water quality deterioration. The government of Kenya and USAID Kenya and East Africa co-developed a multifaceted program of development support to address these challenges. Today, we will hear from 5 speakers about these development programs, their design, and the approaches and learnings from within them that are helping to support the delivery of inclusive and safe countywide water services in Kenya. First, we will hear from Amanda Robertson, the Director of WASH and Energy Services at USAID Kenya and East Africa, about the design of these programs and activities. Next, the Honorable Penina Mukabane, County Executive Committee Member for Water, Environment, Climate Change, and Natural Resources from Kakamega County, will speak to her experience co-creating interventions with the USAID Western Kenya Water Project. Then, we will hear from Japheth Mbuvi, Chief of Party of the Western Kenya Water Project, Abhishek Khanna, Director at FSG working on USAID Urban WASH, and Peace Musange, the Program Manager for USAID Real Water. Each speaker will provide an overview of their respective projects and activities in Kenya. Then we will have time for Q&A with some prepared questions to draw out the complementarities of these programs and how they each contribute to improving water quality and service delivery through an integrated, locally led, and collaborative approach. Time permitting, we will answer questions from the audience. Thank you for joining, and I'll hand it over to Amanda.
Thanks so much, Sarah. I'm happy to be here today. As Sarah said, my name is Amanda Robertson, and I work in our Okay, can everyone hear me? All right. Thanks so much for having me here today. As Sarah said, my name is Amanda Robertson, and I work on WASH and Energy Services with USAID Kenya and East Africa. And I wanted to give a bit of background before we start talking about our specific examples of how we're working together across several different types of projects. So USAID Kenya went through the process of designing a new portfolio of projects around 2020, 2021. Obviously not a super easy time to be doing designs, but we've managed to get them all out and get our project started. However, we knew there were several factors that we wanted to consider as we were designing these projects. The first was context and working in the various contexts of Kenya in ways that optimized innovations for those specific needs and opportunities. The other was learning that we had done previously. So post-project evaluations, action research that would feed into the new designs around, for instance, market studies or adaptations needed, things like that. And then the third was, how do we explore ways to build in complementary learning throughout the process of the new portfolio? And the latter is what we're here to talk about today. So we're quite fortunate to have such a great action research projects within USAID. 2 examples that you'll hear from today are Urban WASH and Real Water. And being able to leverage those in ways that are complementary to our direct bilateral implementation of water, sanitation, and hygiene projects allows for strengthened implementation, as well as informed future programming, and hopefully overall thought leadership and contributions to the sector, all of which are critically important to us. This typically happens in one of two ways in terms of how we kind of partner with these action research mechanisms or activities. One, we reach out to the research mechanism with an idea that we feel aligns well with their scope and mandate, as well as our bilateral objectives. From there, we workshop ideas until we have something that works well for all of us. On the other hand, another option or way that this happens is one of the research projects actually reaches out to us with an idea. When this happens, one of the first questions we tend to ask is, how could this fit with what we're already doing? How could this contribute to sector learning, sector growth, as well as how can this help the bilateral projects further their own learning and implementation? And sometimes that means workshopping the ideas a bit. So what you're going to hear today is some examples of that, which often requires both the bilateral projects, the direct implementation projects, and then the research projects to each give a little to find that common ground that's going to mutually benefit all of us, as well as hopefully the sector as a whole. So that's a bit of background on how we got to where we are today. I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues to give their examples and explain a little bit more about how all of this comes together, what specific research looks like, how that fits in with direct implementation, and hopefully how we're contributing to that larger sector learning as well. Thanks, Sari.
Thank you, Amanda. To speak more about how these projects come together, I'd like to hand it over to the Honorable Penina Mukavane to speak about how she has been involved in co-creation processes. Ms. Mukavane?
Thank you very much. The co-creation process has worked very well for Kakamega County. The USAID Western Kenya Water Project has embedded staff approach, and it offers technical expertise and also additional resources to the county water department. This process has promoted consultations and co-creation of activities right from the time of planning, coming up with the county integrated development plan, the county annual development plan, and right into implementation and capacity building of our water service providers and communities as well. For instance, when the new government came into place, the governor had in his manifesto a program called Amatsi Humulyango. Amatsi Humulyango is a Luya name that means water at the doorstep. And we had to find a way of ensure that we capture the governor's manifesto into our county annual development plan and in the county integrated development plan. So the water department, USAID, Western Kenya project, and other water sector stakeholders came together to ensure this is put into the planning process. The co-creation also shapes joint priorities and design activities. This promotes ownership of the projects, and it also provides for co-investment in terms of the county government also putting aside resources to go into the project. An example is Lumino Water Project in Likuyani sub-county, and also Luahupa Water Project in Navaholo constituency within Kakamega County. Co-creation also enables pooling of resources and enhances collective action. This has resulted into a bigger impact, also for strengthening capacities and sustainability. It has strengthened collaboration between various water sector players, and this has also promoted a lot of, when it comes to pooling resources together, to be able to get a big impact from one project when various stakeholders come together. And it also helps us to avoid duplication, where we have different partners working in different parts of the county, so that we ensure the entire county is covered by different partners as well. And USAID Western Kenya has given us a platform called the Wash Sector Forum, where all the other partners come together We share experiences, opportunities, and the county government provides leadership on which activities should be done where. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now that we've heard about how the design process has worked both from the USAID perspective as well as the county perspective, I'd like to transition the conversation to hearing from some of the projects themselves. So we'll get started with the Western Kenya Water Project. Over to you, Jaffa.
Thank you, and good afternoon again. The Western Kenya Water Project is a 24 million USAID investment in the 8 counties of Western Kenya, and that is implemented by DAI. And its main goal is to increase the availability and access to water services in Western Kenya, while enabling better management of water resources. And essentially, this is in response to the challenges, the challenges in the Western Kenya region that span from poor governance, operational inefficiencies that actually manifest themselves in high and revenue water levels, and the lack of adequate financing in the entire sector. So we do have a big wash financing gap. There's also insufficient capital in the area. And again, we have got degradation of water resources that we have had to respond to. We have moved in with basically 3 clear approaches, objectives rather, to handle this. And one has been to increase the ability of the county governments and the water service providers to deliver good quality, reliable, and safe water services to the urban, rural, and the peri-urban areas. So essentially, our approach here has been about building the capacities of the institutions that work in these particular areas. The other has been to strengthen the systems within which water service providers do operate. And this has basically looked at the issues that relate to governance, that look into issues of how we can be able to provide the financing that is required or facilitate that particular process, so as to be able to ensure we have got continuing improvement in water service provision in the area. And again, ensuring that we have got sector inclusivity by helping create channels of increased participation among the youth, women, people living with disabilities, and as well as ensuring that the private sector is brought in so that we can be able to improve water service provision. In getting this one to happen, we have really worked on 5 different thematic areas, and the first one being urban. And our work in urban, as I said, has been centered around building the capacities of these water sector institutions so as to be able to improve their operational efficiency. Is essentially what some water sector people refer to as fixing the institutions that fix the pipes. And so this has been a very big part of the work that we have been doing. And we have done this by looking at promoting district metered areas as an approach to reducing non-revenue water, as well as supporting data and digital solutions that are instrumental in ensuring that we have a basis for planning. And so as to be able to maintain the momentum, we have ensured that each of the water service providers that we have been working with has a prepared performance improvement plan and a strategic plans that we keep on monitoring over time to ensure that we remain on track. In rural, our work has basically been I normally say that rural water happens on itself, and I know Amanda is laughing where she is now. And it happens on itself because really for a very long time, there's been no framework under which we operate under. And therefore, the WASREP, which is the water sector regulator, did develop guidelines of how this is going to be able to work on. And so we have been working with the county governments to ensure that we are helping them operationalize the different service delivery models that are in place. We have, for example, now Kakamega and the Kisumu counties having moved into creating rural water utilities, which were normally known for the rural areas. The beauty about the service delivery models is that they help support professionalization of the sector as well as bringing in the whole issue of regularization and commercial practices within the sector. And again, we are not prescribing this, and so we have got locally tailored solutions in each of the areas that we're working in. As I did mention, it has become very critical that in the catchments and the areas that we're working in, we look into areas of enabling proper water resources management. And on this, we've actually been working on strengthening the coordination mechanisms for shared water resources in all these particular areas, and working specifically with the national government agencies such as the Water Resources Authority, the Kenya Forest Authority, and the local community groups, so as to be able to further conservation efforts here. And essentially, we're looking at how do we put in place viable payment mechanisms that help us protect the sector, and then supporting the water resources authority associations to be able to prepare and develop, and implement management plans, sub-catchment management plans in the particular areas. We have the last two cross-cutting thematic areas, and one of them is about finance and private sector engagement. And we basically do appreciate that public sector financing is not adequate, and therefore the need for commercial and other blended forms of finance becomes essential. And so we have been working with the different partners to ensure that we can be able to attract sector financing in these particular areas, and really looking for solutions, not just solid finance alone. And the whole issue of now featuring areas of governance, because the elephant in the house is actually governance. And looking at how do we thread this through to strengthen governance and accountability within the entire sector, both in urban and rural, as well as all the other institutions at the county and national level, because this now creates the necessary environment that we can be able to start mobilizing finance that will then be able to lead to sustainable water services in the sector. Lastly, this entire approach, just like Madam Minister had mentioned, it is about ensuring that we have got county-led planning, county-led implementation, and county ownership to ensure sustainability. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jaffa. Thank you, Jaffa, for those remarks on the Western Kenya Water Project. And now over to Abhishek Khanna to speak about Urban Wash.
Thanks, Ravina. So I'll start with an overview of the Urban Wash project. The USAID Urban Wash project is one of USAID's several global research and learning mechanisms within the wash space. And Urban Wash specifically aims to generate evidence that can support climate resilient wash and WRM policy and programming in urban and peri-urban areas. We have three main focus areas. The first is around the enabling environment for more inclusive citywide water and sanitation services. The second is approaches for formalizing small and informal service providers. And the third looks at source water protection and diversification. What I'll share today looks at the second focus area, which is on small and informal service provision. We have been doing implementation research on this particular topic in 3 countries: Zambia for sanitation services, Kenya for specifically the Western Kenya region for water services, and Mozambique, where we're looking at both water and sanitation services. And the essential question that we're trying to answer here is, can formalization of these local informal service providers be an alternative to utilities or municipalities expanding services themselves, knowing that there are fundamental challenges for both water and sanitation services to reach marginalized urban populations, especially those living in low-income areas, peri-urban areas, where extending pipe networks, whether for sewage or water, can be quite challenging. Can we have the next slide, please? For us, Kenya, specifically Western Kenya, was a very appropriate study site, given the general sector developments that have been happening here over the past few years. So the starting point is fundamentally water vendors, which we term as small local service providers or SLPs, are highly prevalent in Kenya. So literature and WASRA reports cite that there are thousands of water vendors who serve a significant chunk of the urban populations. Given this background, WASRIP and the local utilities seem to have an intention of formalizing them and leveraging them for expanding services. So over the last 5 years has released several frameworks and mandates. The first one was the guideline on water vending that came out in 2019. A few years later, they released contracting guidelines for licensing these water vendors. And recently, which is February of last year, they set out a mandate for all utilities to map and register the water vendors operating in their jurisdictions. Our conversations from the utilities in Western Kenya also indicates that they generally acknowledge the need to formalize water vendors because fundamentally they know that certain parts of the population they cannot serve on their own. But despite the stated intention, there is a gap in terms of what's happening on the ground. From our scoping and conversations with the utilities in Western Kenya, only 2 out of 8 utilities are actively implementing formalization models. These 2 were the ones that we studied as part of our implementation research. But we see this as an opportunity to learn from these 2 models and inform how the water vending guidelines and frameworks can be refined and evolved. And also understand what kind of support might be required for the other utilities who have the intention but are not able to follow through with the implementation. You go to the next slide. The 2 regions or cities where we did the research were Homa Bay and Kisumu. And we studied several models within these cities. And essentially, these the formalization that's happening in these cities can be classified into 2 models. In Homa Bay, we see what we call integration models, where the utility, over the course of several years, almost close to a decade now, is integrating existing water vendors to source, pay for, and sell utility water. So these are markets, as you can see from the visual on the left with the light blue. These were markets with several informal vendors, maybe some kiosks, maybe some hand carts, maybe some donkey carts, who essentially procured water from the lake and sold it to households. And over time, utilities have attempted to formalize many of these vendors, and that's reflected in the darker blue on the right side, by essentially providing them with utility water. So it's leading to these vendors shifting away from procuring lake water to selling utility water and paying for utility water. And that's the formalization mechanism that's happening. What we also see in Kisumu are replacement models. Here, essentially, there are existing water vendors, often vendors who steal water, termed locally as cartels, or even community-based operators or boreholes in peri-urban who are not necessarily providing good quality water. And given the problematic nature of these markets, the utilities of the counties have attempted to essentially replace these vendors with a single, more monopolistic community-based operator. So we've seen that happening in Nyalanda, and we've seen that happening in Chemelil and peri-urban Kisumu, where essentially there's conflict at the start of the formalization, and these existing operators replaced with a single operator who has strong community ties and is able to then manage the conflicts and essentially replace the old system with a better, more formalized system. I'll pause here. This was an overview of the research. I will share some more specific lessons and findings as we get into the Q&A. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Abhishek, for your remarks on integrating the small local providers in water services delivery. And now I will transition to invite Peace to speak about the Real Water program. Over to you, Peace.
Thank you, Serafina, and good morning, everyone. What Real Water stands for? Real Water is an acronym. As you can see, it stands for Rural Evidence and Learning for Water. And to your left, right, you can see these are the partners. We have several partners in the consortium. You can continue to the next slide, Amanda. So, Real Water is an initiative of USAID, and it's running from 2021 to 2026. And Acquire Institute is leading this consortium. So, as you're aware with the acronym, it's a research-based, it's applied research. And what we're trying to do is to generate evidence to guide policymakers and other development partners to make strategic decisions to guide water management in rural areas. So rural water is spread across several countries and continents. As you can see, we have over 13 countries. We also have in Asia and different parts of Africa and also South America. So to your right, you can see the key focal areas for real water. We have one that deals with water safety management. We have one that deals with professionalization. And then we also have one that does planning for water resources. So for Kenya, we're going to focus on the one that is focusing on strengthening water quality monitoring. And how we're trying to gain this evidence. We have a novel model that we are testing. It's a financial model that we're calling the Water Quality Assurance Fund. And this approach is we partner rural water systems with accredited urban laboratories to perform monthly testing as per the KEBS and WASREB and World Health Organization guidelines. And in addition to that, when the water operators receive these results, we also give them guidance on how to interpret the results and take any corrective measures for protecting water safety. You can go to the next slide, Amanda. So this is the image of the model that we are currently testing in Kenya. So how does the Water Quality Assurance Fund work? So as you know that most rural systems at times struggle with their income to pay for repairs, to pay for testing. So what happens is that the Water Quality Assurance Fund is a mechanism that will guarantee to the labs to come and test these water systems on a monthly basis as per the national guidelines. So we have different key stakeholders in an agreement that we've signed with in Kenya. We have the laboratory, we have the water system, and then we also have the county government, which is the enforcer. So ideally, on a monthly basis, the laboratory comes to the water system and collects samples and tests after the water system has paid. However, as I say, that we know that sometimes there's struggles in terms of income. Maybe it's a rainy season, and people are not maybe collecting water from the taps, and they're using rainwater harvesting. So maybe there's a fluctuation in the income. So what will happen is that the Water Quality Assurance Fund will step in, and we shall pay on behalf of that struggling system. However, we'll inform the county about this payment we've made, and the water system will pay us back with a small surcharge. This is a surcharge that we discuss with the counties before we sign this agreement. So we do not just decide the surcharge. In addition to that, we have monthly debrief sessions where we offer the water operators and also some water system managers how to interpret their results and also technical guidance. So as I say, this is an evaluation is taking place. It started last year in August 2023 and is going through 2 years to December 2025. So we have two implementing partners who are currently involved. We have a research arm and an implementation arm. So Acquire and Water Mission Kenya are the local implementing partners. And in addition to USAID, we have co-funding from the Conrad Hilton Foundation and the Hemsley Charitable Trust. Please to the next slide. So this is a map of Kenya where we are currently evaluating the Water Quality Assurance Fund, and that's more towards the western side of Kenya. As you can see, we have 3 counties, Uasin Gishu in blue, Kericho in maroon, and then Nakuru County in red. So in total, we have 35 rural water systems, and we are working with 3 urban laboratories that are nearby. That's Kewasco for Kericho County that is managing the rural water systems, and the urban laboratory is Kewasco based in Kisumu. Then for Nakuru, which has we have most of the systems, we're working with a rural utility called Naruwasco. And the laboratory is an in-county laboratory called Nawasco. It's an urban laboratory. And then for Uasin Gishu, we have a utility. It's just a newly formed utility called Uruwasco, and then one private institution and an in-county laboratory, the urban utility called Eldowas. So currently we are monitoring the following parameters. We have E. coli, total coliforms, chlorine, turbidity, conductivity, pH, aluminum, total iron, fluoride, manganese, and nitrates. However, some of these parameters are system-based. They're not just, they don't cut across. But the key parameters we're looking at are E. coli and chlorine. Yeah, thank you. Next slide, please. So yes, that is it in a nutshell about the Water Quality Assurance Fund. And we shared some links with Serafina. We've had a lot of outputs that Serafina will share in the link where you can follow up the different research reports and fact sheets that we've put out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peace. So now that we have a shared understanding of both the action research programs and the bilateral water project in Kenya, we'd like to transition to some question and answer. So I have some prepared questions to get us started, but I welcome all of the participants, if you have questions, to submit them in the chat, and hopefully we'll have some time after the prepared questions to discuss those as well. So my first question is to Abhishek and is about how can counties formally leverage the small local providers, and what are some considerations for implementing regulations at a local level?
Yeah, thanks, Rafina. So before I answer the question, it might be helpful to contextualize some of our key findings from the research. The first thing I want to note, which are our findings on the left side, is that we saw several positive impacts through formalization of informal water vendors. We saw within different settlements, more than half or almost all households shifting away from sourcing water from lakes to using utility water. We saw a significant reduction in prices over the course of 5 to 10 years. Noting that even in that case, often women-headed households continue to report affordability challenges, generally because they are lower income, but at the market level, prices continue reducing. And interestingly, households are highly satisfied with water vendors, even where they may be paying higher than typical WASREP tariffs or utility tariffs. Households stay there satisfied. They they feel the quality of water is good, and this includes both formal and informal vendors. So for us, this essentially justifies, or at least makes it a reason for why formalization might be a good idea for the Kenyan context. I think the utilities and WASREP are already in the positive direction, given how much work is happening on creating guidelines and frameworks. This is additional evidence to say that households often are happy with vendors, and if you formalize them, services can improve. The second aspect is on acknowledging the different kinds of models we saw. This is something that's not necessarily acknowledged not just in Kenya, but in general, when we speak about the point of formalizing informal service providers, that there may be different choices of different kinds of models. And when we talk about the models we saw in Kenya, we see that there are some trade-offs that are interesting and worth calling out. So if you, for example, think about replacement versus integration, replacement essentially means a monopolistic supplier within the market. What that means is this supplier has a very large market share. So they can be profitable and viable even with reduced or highly regulated prices. Versus if you have an integration model where there are several water vendors, so it is a more competitive and possibly a healthier market. But because market shares are low and volumes are lower, these vendors do need higher prices to be able to make enough profit for them to stay in the business. So there is this tension of having competitive markets and having price control. We also see tensions in terms of how complex the implementation can be. Integration is generally easier. It's done over a longer time period. It's lower effort for the utility. Essentially, they're extending water services. There's not a lot of engagement with the vendors in the community versus a replacement essentially reconfigures the market. So it's much more complex. It's disruptive to the communities because the water vendors are being replaced. Water vendors may often present conflicts, the existing ones, and it often requires a lot of coordination, a lot of effort from the utility, even where we see, for example, support from the police to make some enforcement, especially when there are illegal activities in terms of water theft happening at the local level. So I think given this context of and the lessons we saw, when we think about how counties and utilities can formalize vendors and what the considerations for regulation are, I think number one is it's helpful to acknowledge that there are different choices of how you formalize. And the option for these models depends on market conditions. So what kind of vendors exist? It depends on the objectives of the counties and also the amount of effort and disruption that they are comfortable with. I think then this has a crucial implication on how we think about refining the water vending guidelines in WASTEP. I think understanding that there are different ways to formalize and then presenting utilities or counties with different options depending on the kind of objectives and resources they have would be a next useful step as we think about refining these frameworks and guidelines. What we've also seen from the ground and is relevant for, again, these water vending guidelines is utilities are already adapting the guidelines depending on their resources. So one of the water vending guidelines has the utilities asking them to create a local association of water vendors. Now, for utilities, they're aware of these guidelines and they agree with the objective, which is to have a single point of conversation and engagement with vendors. But formally creating an association can become a lot of effort. So to meet the same objective, they're doing different kinds of things. So they may find a local powerful vendor who knows many other vendors, and that becomes their entry point. They may use something as simple as a WhatsApp group to disseminate information and invite vendors to formalize. So utilities are already adapting and using different mechanisms to meet the same objective. So I think going forward, there's an opportunity to make these adaptations more explicit in the water vending guidelines, and that to a degree will probably provide more clarity to the other utilities who haven't been able to implement this the way Homa Bay and Kisumu have.
Thank you, Abhishek. I think that transitions nicely to thinking about also some of the similar challenges and opportunities in rural water services. So I'd like to invite both Real Water and Western Kenya Water Project, maybe starting with Western Kenya Water Project, to speak to how the professionalization of rural water schemes has led to service improvements. Japheth or Patrick, could you speak to that, please?
Thank you very much, Serafina. First of all, I'd want to give a little bit of background why the service delivery models. First of all, we must indicate that available evidence shows that 1/3 of water service providers or rural water services is non-functional at any given time, and that affects stability or sustainability of water services in rural areas. So then the regulator in 2019-2020 developed service delivery models or a guideline for service delivery, a guideline for provision of water services in rural and underserved areas. And this guideline, the idea was to support the counties to domesticate depending on the topology that is available, and also support the county government just to land it very well so that adoption and implementation will be very easy and seamless in a way. So far, what have we done as Western Kenya Water Project, and why are we supporting the county government? We realize that, as stated by the CCM Kakamega and also by the Chief of Party Western Kenya Water Project, that co-creation and co-planning was critical because the county government had to understand the tenets of these service delivery models and what it took, or what was it that needed to be done so that the implementation was seamless. Western Kenya Water Project, together with the county government in the Lake region, that is Western Kenya, the 8 county governments sat, co-developed and co-planned on critical activities that were to be done so that this identification implementation was to take place. So we realized that institutionalizing the implementation was critical. So then we supported the county government to develop a technical working group. Basically, the technical working group are the terms of reference that included identification of the initial water service providers that was supposed to be put under service delivery models. But then after identification, which was done through criteria that was co-developed by the county government, then we are to bring in the water service regulator or the water regulator from the national level, just to train the county government and to train all the staff to have a clear understanding on what was in the service delivery models. So that was done, and as that was being done, then the regulations, the policy, the enabling environment was also to be fixed, whereby policies and the laws were a little bit worked on or reviewed in instances whereby they were there, and where they were not there, they were formulated just to help us embed the service delivery models within the legal frameworks, so that beyond Western Kenya Water Project, then the county government would be able to sustainably implement the service delivery models going forward. So far, we have made a lot of strides as Western Kenya Water Project. We have supported the counties to identify and adopt the service delivery models, and most of the counties are at various stages in implementation. Specifically, I want to talk about Kakamega and Kisumu County that have gone ahead and established rural water companies that are currently getting regulated or are regulated by the national regulator. And the beauty with the water company getting into regulation, it means that sustainability is guaranteed, and the water project can be able to be rated along the key performance indicators that have been provided nationally by the national regulator. So in the last impact report of the national regulator, Kakamega Rural Water Company was ranked amongst the ones that have been there for many years, and we are seeing very positive results. As we're speaking currently, we have seen private operators getting to sign contracts in Kakamega and also in Obe County government, just because of the latitude that has been provided for by the service delivery models. We are seeing positive results and positive cases coming out of this, and we are very confident that in the near future, working together with the county government and other players within the service provision, will be able to transform the story that at any given time, 1/3 of rural water service provision is non-functional to a story whereby at any given time, all the investment in the rural water services will be functional to the life of the project design period. I submit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. And now I'd like to invite Peace to speak about how water quality testing can lead to service improvements. Peace?
Yeah, thank you, Serafina. Yes, to date we've sampled and had meetings, monthly meetings, to discuss the test results, a total of 24, and we've seen very promising results with these discussions. And these monthly debrief meetings that we have cut across different stakeholders, from the county ministers to the water operators. So we try to involve the different stakeholders who are key to water safety in the county. Also from health community providers in some counties, the public health, we have the technocrats, we have the lab, we have the utilities, both the urban, whose lab we're using, and the rural utilities, and private institutions also. What we've seen is that very many promising results that I'm going to briefly tackle on. As you're aware, this is a research that is ongoing, so we will be able to measure these the success of these initiatives next year. However, I will still speak about what is currently going on. Firstly, in terms of chlorination, we've seen improvement in processes for chlorination. And what we're seeing is that there's the counties are looking at these results and have started purchasing dosing units for those systems that did not have PPEs for the water operators, because we know the corrosive nature of working with chlorine. Then there's also training of the water operators on how to compute the chlorine demand so that they get the right dosage, so that we have the right amount at the consumer point. And then secondly, there's been also capacity building. As you know, in these debrief sessions, we also have a knowledge session in addition to discussing the results. And we've seen also an improvement in terms of during the participatory discussions with the water operators and also the technical area managers in terms of water quality topics that we discuss. Then also the results have helped the utilities and other water service providers identify gaps in their distribution system. So this has also led to them starting to do some renovations in their infrastructure, because they could say that maybe we need to change the sun filter, it's affecting the turbidity, we need to change the dosing unit or the type of chlorine, the chlorine process that they're using. Then also, we've also seen requests for technical assistance from some of these utilities in terms of assisting them in computing chlorine demand, assisting them in management professionalization of their systems. Then also we've seen community sensitization. The utilities are seeing the importance of this water quality data and how they're looking at strategies on how to engage communities on water quality issues. Then there's also been improved collaboration among the stakeholders, because what we've noticed is that these meetings seem to be a first of its kind, where we have from the water operator to the minister all in one room discussing the results. And this has led to better collaboration and interaction among the different stakeholders in the water supply chain in the counties. Then we've also seen action, because we know that some of the areas in Kenya have geogenic parameters, and we're seeing some action towards ways of tackling these geogenic parameters. Then also the data has also helped guide the counties in terms of their integrated plan, their 5-year plans for their WASH investments. So based on these results, they can say we need to change our conventional treatment system. We need to buy more equipment. We need to train our workers. So that has also helped them. At least now what they have is evidence-based. So when they're developing their county budgets, they have the evidence, and now they know how to, they have targeted WASH investments. Then lastly, also currently the data is also guiding other in-county projects. For example, in Kericho County, there's a World Bank funded project called K-WASH, and one of the components is water quality. It's a performance-based project, and there's some synergies that they're seeing with real water, how they use this water quality data to improve the water supply and safety in the county, which is very key for them to get these funds from K-WASH. So in a nutshell, I can say that the results have been very promising and very positive, that these actions, when we finally evaluate next year, we'll see that what the water quality data has really triggered action for all the different stakeholders in the county. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peace, for sharing about how these results are being used both at the county and at the utility level for planning. We have a question in the chat about if you could elaborate on how samples are picked and whether that's at the point of end use.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. I'll tackle the sample collection. Okay, sample picking, sample collection. Yes, we collect samples at different points of the distribution system. We collect samples from product water. We collect samples from consumer points. And also we have a research arm where we're also collecting samples at household level. So we're looking at water quality along the full distribution chain from the water treatment works to the household level. However, for the labs are collecting samples at the water treatment works and at the consumer points. It's the research arm that also focuses on the household level. So in terms of water safety planning, that's a very good question. Real Water is also carrying out research on water safety planning, but this is happening in Ghana, and we have some outputs there from Ghana. However, for the systems that we are currently working with, yes, we've had discussions with them about their water safety planning, and as I can say, for now, it's a work in progress for 2 of the counties. And one of the counties has a water safety plan that they're currently implementing. And yes, I think water safety planning would be very important in addition to water quality testing to improve water safety in the counties. So I would encourage everyone. We've also told them about our research in Ghana that because also we're dealing with rural utilities. It would be very important for them as they're developing their water safety plan to see what lessons have been learned from Ghana so they can have a very good water safety plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Joseph, a question in the chat for you perhaps about why is there a gap in water governance, in the governance of water service provision? Though it's very important for the infrastructure of water systems. Would you like to speak to what you've seen in regards to water sector governance and perhaps some of the initiatives on the Western Kenya Water Project to address that?
Was that to me?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Joseph?
Yes, Afrina, that was to me.
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. As I mentioned when I was making the presentation about what we've been doing, I did also mention that the elephant in the house is governance. And it is about governance because it transcends a lot of the things. One, at the national level, WASREP has got very clear guidelines on how you constitute the management of different water institutions, including the water service providers and the rest. But this is not always the case. And part of why it is not the case is because of the nature of government, that we normally do transition every 5 years. And when things change in the local government setup, this has got a clear implications on what the preferences of the new government are. Again, being a governance issue, the allocation of funding for the different in-between sectors, water, roads, and health, and then specifically what has come to water and how that gets distributed, there are a lot of challenges in that. And part of that, as I do mention, is one of the things that we are actually addressing. We have realized that we cannot be able to resolve this governance issue when we do not really talk policy in a more detailed level and the legislation and its implementation with the county assemblies. And so we have been very deliberate in ensuring that as part of the conversation that we are having, and so as to be able to gain how the water infrastructure facilities are implemented, we are very keen in engaging both the budget committee as well as the water and environment committee of the assemblies in trying to determine how the allocations are done, and ensuring also that we can be able to raise the budget allocations for water in the county level as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think your answer provides a nice transition to move into some closing remarks from Ms. Mukabane on what can be done to enhance the sustainability of these efforts towards achieving water security in Kenyan counties. Ms. Mukabane?
Yes, a lot can be done to enhance sustainability of the programs. The one thing we need to do is to have the right legal instruments and development plans in place to provide an enabling environment for the investors and partners to work in. For instance, for Kakamega County, we were able to be assisted by the Western Kenya Water Project to review the County Water Act, and also in developing the 5-year County Integrated Development Plan. At that time, Western Kenya Water Project were available to be able to embed key issues affecting water in the plan. Now, these plans also play a big role in ensuring continuity. Even when one government is not there, the next government knows exactly what needs to be done and the partners we are working with. We have the master plan, the county water master plan, the county water policy are in place, and all of them we were supported by the partner. We need also to ensure sustainability. There is need to support system strengthening of the institutions and training and joint implementation to enable continuity. For instance, the Western Kenya Water Project has played a big role in capacity building the water service providers, the management, and the boards. And we were able to see the results because in the last impact report, the Kakamega County Water Company was rated the most improved in the whole country. And it was also rated the best performing water service provider in the Western region. And we give credit to the efforts that have gone in from both WASREB and the USAID Western Kenya. Actually, they called in WASREB to support the training. And of course, that will go a long way because now the company and the management know about the key performance indicators, including the reduction of non-revenue water and being able to exhibit a proper repayment capacity in case of financial support. There is also need to encourage interventions that empower water service providers to be bankable and also come up with the innovations and technologies that enhance cost recovery in terms of service provision. For instance, digital billing has come on board, and also solarization to cut down on cost of power, and GIS mapping. This enables to know exactly how the water projects are distributed across the county and which areas need intervention. And also there is need to involve stakeholders in implementation of these projects, the county government and the community managed schemes, where we include communities to encourage ownership. Most of the community water schemes that were non-performing, from the interventions that have come in, we are able to see an improvement in financial management, record keeping, and so on. So even those that we thought we would take them up to be managed by the water service providers, there's been an improvement in the way they manage, the communities manage their water supplies. And of course, for sustainability, I advocate for increased lifespan of the project, because when the lifespan of the project is too short, by the time you start realizing the benefits or the impact, that the project is already gone. I can see an example of KDSP project for Butwehe and Lumino, where someone has asked a question, but I'll have time to answer that. And it's also important also to embed the service delivery models to be embedded in the county regulatory instruments, like the County Water Act and the policies. Initially, we did not have the private operators on board, but I've seen most of them have come on board. Like we have Sana International, which was brought on board to us by the chief of party for Western Kenya project. He was able to link us to some of them, and now we have a conversation. They have come on the ground to take up some of the water schemes that were not performing well. Like an example is Obulamu Water Project in Navaholo and Shitoli water project in Kakamega Central. So we are doing well, especially when the private operators come on board and the communities are strengthened, then we take the burden off the formal water service providers. And of course, dissemination of data from research and studies done by different actors in the sector will also go a long way in supporting evidence-based decision making. So some of the data that has come from the research that is done in the sector, it will be important if it is shared with the county governments so that our planning is based on evidence from those data. And of course, transition management of water service providers. We have learned a lesson that once the board has been trained and they qualify to continue the board evaluation will determine also that we continue having the same board in place because they've already been trained and they know what to do. Thank you.
Thank you. I know we are at the end of the session, so I have posted the contact information here for our speakers, and I just wanted to thank our speakers for participating in this session. I think we all learned a lot about collaboration with counties, with on capacity building and professionalization with water service providers, and on how initiatives can be used to advocate for and attract financing in the sector. So thank you all for sharing your perspectives with us, and thank you to all of our participants who joined in on this session. Please feel free to reach out to any of us for additional information, and have a great day.